Hello and welcome to this presentation on MLA Style 9th edition by the Century College Writing Center. This presentation will cover the basics of MLA style, paper elements and format, writing style and grammar, the use and documentation of sources, as well as available MLA resources at Century. What is MLA style? MLA style is a writing style that ensures all readers follow the same format, use of language, quotation, and documentation of sources. MLA stands for the Modern Language Association, and it's used in disciplines such as English, art history, liberal arts, and humanities. It's helpful to have a rough idea of the basics of MLA style, but you don't need to know all of it. Having some information about MLA style will help you get started and know what resources to use when you need help. The three main elements of MLA style are the formatting of the paper, in-text citations, and the works cited page. First, we'll cover the paper elements and format. There are two main parts or elements of an MLA style paper. There's the body of the paper, which is organized in paragraphs, and then a works cited page at the end of the paper that lists all of the sources used in the paper. For the format of the paper, you may put your last name and the page number on the right in the header, your name, the instructor name, the course name and number, and the date on the top left of the paper. It should be double-spaced throughout, have 1-inch margins all the way around, and a 1/2-inch indentation on all paragraphs. Use a standard, easily accessible 12-point font. Here you will see an example of an MLA formatted paper. As you can see, there's a standard 12-point font used for all parts of the paper. To start formatting your paper, put your last name and the page number on the header on the right side using the Insert menu. Your name and the course information should go on the top of your paper on the left. Do not put this information in the header. Start with your name, your instructor's name, the course title, and the date. The title should be centered with all major words capitalized, and it should not be bolded or underlined. There should be double spacing throughout the paper, starting on the first line and all the way through to the works cited page. There should be 1-inch margins all around the paper, which is what is default for most word processing programs. You should also use a 1/2-inch indent for each paragraph, which again should be the standard for most word processing programs. The writing style for an MLA style paper varies by the assignment. You should follow the guidelines presented in your assignment sheet or ask your instructor if you have questions. It might vary by assignment type. In most cases, avoid using the second person point of view, such as you, your, or yours. But it might be okay for you to use the first person point of view in a narrative style paper, for example, by saying I, me, and mine. Or your instructor may only want you to use the third person point of view. Always talk to your instructor if you're not sure. Papers in MLA style can be informal and personal, or formal and academic, and everything in between. Regarding grammar, there's lots of standard academic grammar to follow in an MLA style paper, but here are a few things to note. First, the word they is accepted as a singular gender-neutral pronoun. With numbers, you should spell out numbers that can be written in 1 or 2 words, such as 2 or 42, for example. Use numerals for longer numbers or measurements or when expressing things like time. Also, observe all other academic grammar standards. When most instructors talk about MLA style, they're referring to how you use and document your sources in your paper. Sources are important because they're used to support, refute, or add to your own arguments or ideas, or to provide background, explanation, or information about a topic. There are 2 ways that you can integrate source materials into your paper. You can quote them directly or use paraphrasing. There are also 2 ways in which you should document the sources in your paper. Using in-text citations, which is when you identify the source in the body of your paper, and the works cited page, where you list the details of the source at the end of your paper. First, we'll talk about the use of sources in direct quotes. A direct quotation is using the source information word for word. Quotation marks should be placed before and after the quoted material. The source information should be integrated with your own writing, and quotes over 4 lines should be formatted as a block quote. Also be sure to include an in-text citation. Here are some examples. The first example, you can see that you have your own writing before the quote. Credible sources accurately is important because, quote, it enhances the argumentative aspect of the written work. The source information is in word for word, so you must put quotation marks around the words. Also, you see we have an in-text citation identifying the author and the page number for the source. The example here is a block quote. This is a quote over 4 lines, so instead of using quotation marks, you indent the whole quote 1/2 inch all the way down. You also should continue to have the citation at the end, except it goes outside of the period instead of inside the period when using a direct quote in quotation marks. Another way to use sources is by paraphrasing. Paraphrasing can be a difficult skill to master, but it's important to paraphrase correctly to avoid plagiarism. Paraphrasing is restating the information using your own words and your own sentence structure. Don't merely swap words out in the same sentence structure. You should take the whole concept or idea and explain it in your own way. The main idea from the source should still be intact, and you don't need to use quotation marks, but you still need to include an in-text citation. As you can see in the example here, there are no quotation marks because you're paraphrasing the author's information. Still, you must have a citation since these ideas are not your own. As you already saw in the previous examples, in-text citations are used to identify when you're using source information in your paper, and it helps your reader find more details about the sources on the works cited page. In-text citations should include the author's last name and page number, but if there's no author, you can include the first 1 to 3 words of the source title in quotation marks and parentheses. Author names and source titles can be in a signal phrase in the sentence or in parentheses at the end of the sentence. If you have a page number, it always goes in parentheses. If there's no page number, it can simply be left off. In the first example here, we use a signal phrase to identify the author, Burke, and then we place the page number in the end with parentheses, as noted. In the second example, we have no page number or author, so we're using the first 3 words of the title in quotation marks and in parentheses. The works cited page lists all of the sources used either with quoting or paraphrasing in your paper. The works cited page should begin on a new page. The title Works Cited should be centered in plain text. It should be double-spaced throughout, using a hanging indent for each citation, and be organized alphabetically by the first word, not including a, an, or the. The basic elements of every entry should include the author or authors, the title of the source, such as an article or a book, the title of the container, such as a journal, other contributors such as editors, version and number, often for journals, the name of the publisher, the publication date, and a location, which could be a URL or a city or page numbers. These entries will vary based on the source. You don't necessarily have to memorize all of this, just know that these are the basic elements. Here's an example of a works cited page. As you can see, the title is centered with both words capitalized and is not bolded or underlined. You can also see an example of a hanging indent. Each citation should begin flush with the left margin, but any subsequent lines should be indented 1/2 inch. This shows when you have new citations. It's also double-spaced throughout. These are different examples of kinds of citations. The first one is an example of a book. As you'll note, the book title is in italics. There are lots of rules regarding the formatting of different types of sources, as well as following the appropriate punctuation. You don't need to necessarily know those rules right now, just be familiar that there are specific rules to follow, and ask for guidance either from the Writing Center, the Century College Library, or by using handouts and resources. In this first example, you'll also see that the author is an organization instead of a person. You can always list an organization as an author. The second example is one we see frequently. This has an author that has actually 2 or 3 more authors. You only list the first author, then et al. For the others. Then we have a title and quotation marks. This is an example of an article title that's been found in a journal. As you can see, it has quotation marks and all major words are capitalized. Following that is the journal title in italics and the journal's volume and issue number. Then you have the publication date and the location, which are the page numbers that the article appears on. You also have an additional container because this source was found on a database, EBSCOhost. List the database name and then the URL where the article could be found on the database. As you can see, there's several other examples here, such as an online article, an article without any authors, a YouTube video, an interview, and a film. Again, you don't necessarily need to know all of these formats, just be familiar of how you can find the right information. Finally, we have plenty of resources at Century College to help you. One of them is our MLA handout. This is a 2-page handout that can be found at the Writing Center D2L self-registration site, as well as in hard copy in the Writing Center. This will give you the basics of formatting as well as most of the examples you saw in this presentation. Additionally, you can come to the Writing Center or contact us with specific questions. You can email us at writingcenter@century.edu, call us at the number listed, or go to D2L Brightspace, Self-Registration, Writing Center to access these materials. You can also follow us on social media or search us on YouTube for other helpful information. Thank you for listening, and we hope to help you soon.